Do you ever feel like you're in a constant battle to be consistent with your fitness and health? Like no matter how well things are going or how much progress you're making, there's always something that comes up that leads you off the track. Maybe you have moments where you're really disciplined, you got momentum, you're in the routine, you're finally starting to move forward. But then something happens. Something happens in the business, something happens at work, something happens with your family, and before you know it, you've veered off the path. And the worst part isn't that you've veered off the path. It's that you start to feed into the old story that you just can't follow through and that you failed once again. If you're ready to break through that cycle altogether, this is the video for you. What we're going to talk about is the root problem that keeps you stuck and keeps you from being consistent, and the one habit that you have to put into place to start to change the way you take care of yourself so you can finally get the results that you want. Now, if you're new here, my name is Brian Pickowitz. I'm one of the head coaches and co-founders here at The Fitness Project, where we focus on building fit and healthy leaders. Over the last decade, we've helped over 1,000 business owners, executives, and managers change the way they take care of themselves. What we believe is when you take care of yourself, you have more energy, you have more focus, you have more confidence for the areas of life that matter to you. And what's great is when you start to take care of yourself, it makes it easier for you to help others take care of themselves too. And so when we talk about consistency, this is one of the biggest challenges that so many clients have when they come onto our team. They say, oh my gosh, like no matter how much motivation I have, no matter how hard I work, I just can't seem to be consistent. And so today what we want to talk about is the reason why that is. What keeps you stuck? What makes it hard for you to follow through? We're going to talk about the 3 mistakes that so many people make when it comes to the way they think about consistency, and the single habit that will change the way you take care of yourself and make it easier for you to follow through towards your goals. Now, when we talk about consistency, I think it's really important that we start with a definition. Most people think consistency is their ability to be perfect. They think consistency is about 7 days a week of being perfect and working out and having their macros dialed in and doing all the things. When in all reality, consistency is your ability to follow through on the behaviors that move you towards your goal. And so what's really important is you have to start off with a goal. And so if you don't know what your goal is, well, maybe that's one thing you should go and address. But if you know your target, I think you actually need to change your target, because the ultimate goal isn't just that we lose weight, isn't just that we look a certain way, it's who we become. And so when we talk to our clients at the Fitness Project, we don't just help them change their body or change some of their behaviors. What we're looking for is an identity change. And so James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits that your habits follow your identity. And so when we think about identity, I just want to shift this approach a little bit. Consistency is about becoming a healthy person. Consistency is about becoming a fit person, becoming someone who takes care of themselves. And it's not about being perfect. What I tell a lot of our clients is that consistency is like a light switch. At times you turn it off, but it's as easy to turn it off as it is to turn it on. And so if you're struggling to be consistent, it's usually because you're beating yourself up and you're judging yourself for falling off track. It's not about how well you do all the time. It's about your ability to recover. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through this, but I really want you to think that consistency is about my ability to get back on track. Because oftentimes, the first mistake isn't the worst mistake. Like no one just eats a whole cake. No one just eats a whole pizza. No one skips a full week of workouts. There's usually small behaviors that lead us down that path. Right? You think of the cake example. Most likely, if you've overeaten on cake, it's because you didn't eat a healthy breakfast. You didn't hydrate. Maybe you didn't sleep the night before. There was something small that started influencing you towards that behavior. But even if you ate a whole piece of cake, it's like 300 calories. Not the end of the world. It's the judgment. It's the criticism. It's when we beat ourselves up. That's when we get stuck. And so to break through all the noise, the root problem that keeps so many people from being consistent is that they fail to meet themselves where they're actually at. We set aspirational behavior goals instead of practical, tactical steps that would allow us to actually move towards where we want to be. And so what I mean by not meeting yourself where you're at is if you are someone who does not have the bandwidth or the time, or let's say even the physical ability to work out 5 days a week, but you tell yourself, that's what I have to do to reach my goal, how long do you think they'll actually last? A week? 2 weeks? 5 weeks? Maybe you'll do the 75 hard, but eventually something breaks. Something happens because you can't sustain the output. There's different seasons, right, where you might lean in. There's nothing wrong with pushing yourself. I implore you to push yourself, but you need to know what the minimum dose is. And so what happens for a lot of people is they know that they have a high standard for themselves in their life. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're someone who gets after in your work and you know, like, oh my God, like I just got to get after this. I got to push myself. There's usually a few categories of people that falls into. It's a type A person who feels like they always have to be perfect, right? So they have to work on their perfectionism. Second is someone who used to have a high standard. So like I know for a lot of athletes or former athletes, when they used to be able to do this, but they haven't done this in a long time, and they're down here, they judge themselves for the gap. And even if you weren't an athlete, let's say you used to weigh a certain weight or you used to be able to bench a certain amount or you used to have a certain outfit that you could wear and you're here now and you used to be here, that gap creates a lot of criticism. And so it creates a lot of shame. And so if we're not able to be humble enough and meet ourselves where we're at, we're never going to see progress because the gap's too far. And even for a lot of people, they come in, maybe they're not an athlete, maybe you're not an athlete, maybe you've never been fit before, but you're like, oh my God, like I hate where I'm at. I just hate it. And so you decide, like, I'm going to make a goal. I'm going to change this. You have all this pain that's driving you. You have this motivation, you have this momentum. And so you decide and you commit. That emotion eventually wears off. And so what a lot of people do is they set aspirational behavior targets instead of inspirational goals and practical behavior targets. And so if you do not meet yourself where you're at, you'll always struggle to be consistent. And where you're at might be a certain set of habits you have to address. Maybe you have a certain relationship with food. Or maybe you don't manage stress well. Maybe you have an emotional eating pattern. Maybe where you're at is just not sleeping. I told someone the other day, she was interested in joining our team, and she was telling me what she was struggling with. And she had some intense digestive issues, energy issues, and she was like trying to push like to work out 7 days a week. And she's like, I'm working out 5 days a week. I think I need to work out more. And I was like, well, let's talk about this. How much are you sleeping? She's like, well, I sleep like 2 or 3 hours a night. I'm like, okay. Where you're at is where you need to meet yourself. And actually what you need to do is downshift and start prioritizing your sleep and your rest. That's where you need to improve. And so where you're at is really subjective based off of the challenges that you're having. And the challenge with fitness and health is there's a lot of things. It could be your nutrition that's in the way. It could be your training that's in the way. It could be your sleep. It could be how you manage your emotions. If you don't meet yourself where you're at, you're always going to struggle because you keep pushing beyond your threshold. And the worst part is when you can't meet your self-defined aspirational behaviors, you default back to your old zone. And so again, what we have to start with is knowing where we're actually at. Where are we at? Bandwidth, time, energy, our body's ability. And what's great is if we meet ourselves where we're at, hey, we can move up the scale. We can make progress. But it's when we fail to meet ourselves where we're actually at that we overcorrect, we overcommit, and then we beat ourselves up and sabotage our progress. And so if we start by meeting ourselves where we're at, there's 3 other common consistency mistakes that people are making that you need to be able to spot, address, and move through in order to actually make progress. And so the first is thinking that consistency means being perfect. Consistency is not about 5 days a week or 7 days a week of workouts. It's not about having the perfect meal plan. It's not about sleeping 8 hours a night. It's about saying, this is the target, and I'm going to focus on hitting that target. And so for a lot of people, they have too many targets. You have this thing you have to do 7 days a week, and you have this amount of sleep, and you have this many macros, and you have all these different targets that you're aiming at. And it's no wonder why you can't be consistent. That if you want to be consistent, set a single target. Set a single target and aim at it, and aim at it, and aim at it. When I was a kid, the only thing I cared about was playing guitar. And I got really good at it. I lived in the middle of nowhere. And so when it came time to hang out with people, there was no one to hang out with. And it took about 30 minutes to get to the local town, local city. So I would just spend my summers in the basement and just play guitar. And when I wanted to learn a song, I didn't try to learn the whole song all at once. I picked one section. And oftentimes it was just playing like 3 notes in a row, 3 notes in a row, 3 notes in a row. And I would play really, really slow. And then once I got the rhythm down, and once I got the cadence down, and once I got the motion down, then I would play it at full speed. And then I would add that to the next part, and the next part. I'd take this big song and chunk it into small parts. And then before I knew it, I could play the full thing. You have to think of your health, your fitness, and your well-being the same way. Pick one target and aim at that. Do not try to be perfect. And more importantly, don't feel like just because you have messed up something that you're off track permanently. It takes one decision to get back on track. It takes one decision to get back in the right direction. When you are struggling to be consistent is because you think that you have to be here. What you really need to do is you need to decide when things are not going well that you're not going to make them worse. Warren Buffett has a quote that reads something like, "The best thing to do when you're in the hole is to stop digging." And so for you, you have to have the emotional awareness and, let's say, the humility to say, you know what? I didn't do a good job there, but I'm not going to make it worse. And the sooner you can humble yourself and accept yourself for not being perfect, the easier it is to get back on track. And so the first thing we have to do is to understand that consistency is not about perfection. It's about making small decisions that move us in the right direction. The second consistency mistake that so many people make is that they have their maximums and not their minimums. And so I talked about having aspirational behaviors. I am someone who ran an ultra marathon. I am someone who lost 65 pounds to win my first bodybuilding competition. When it comes to fitness, I know something about the extremes, but I don't live in the extremes. Most of my life has been about knowing my minimums, not just my maximums. And so I do have maximums. I want to be able to work out 6 days a week. I want to be able to have the perfect macros. I want to be able to sleep 8 hours a night. Those are my maximums. Those are my aspirations. But what I found to be very important, especially when the business is growing and I'm traveling for a trip or have a wedding or a vacation or it's just a shitty day, is that I want to make sure that I have my minimum set. And so the minimums are like the minimum dosage that allows me to stay healthy. It's the minimum dosage that allows me to stay on the path of health. It helps me move towards my identity of being a fit and healthy leader. And so what I always prescribe for clients is a certain amount of steps, a certain amount of water, making sure you eat a healthy breakfast, making sure that you eat some protein. Maybe it is making sure that you get a certain amount of sleep. Right? Like my minimum dosage for sleep is 6.5 hours. If I don't get 6.5 hours of sleep, I don't have energy. I have a thyroid condition that really creates a lot of friction in my body. It's not good for me. So I can go for one night with a minimum dosage of sleep, but hey, I need to be seeing myself move towards that other target in the long term. Different seasons require different minimums. And so in this season, the most important thing you can do is define your minimums. Once that foundation becomes solid, then you can build. And so if the first mistake is that we think we have to be perfect, if the second mistake is that we define our maximums and we don't have minimums, the third is that we think that consistency is a destination. And so if you think consistency is a destination, you will always judge yourself for how hard it feels when you don't want to do it. You will always judge yourself for the days you follow through. What we have to understand is consistency is a daily process. It's a decision. You have to consistently make decisions. And so if you're not self-aware, if you don't understand when you're activated, if you don't understand your emotions, well, then you just think that you're a victim. You just think that life is happening to you. You think that, oh my God, it's a bad day. It's horrible. I've screwed up again. I'm such a failure. Versus that was not what I wanted. That was a bad decision. What do I have to do to make it right? It's a never-ending process of you deciding to take care of yourself. And it's not easy because life is designed for convenience. Our lives are designed for ease. And so if you do not slow down and decide who you want to be and how you want to take care of yourself, you will always drift towards what's convenient, and what's convenient is usually not healthy. You have to think of greatness. People who are great, people who are masters of their craft, they are working on it every single day. I think of someone like Tom Brady. I think of someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think of someone like Warren Buffett or like Sarah Blakely or Oprah or all these people. They have worked consistently to get to where they are. And if you look at any healthy person in your life, they've worked consistently to get to where they are. But they started from where they were. And so again, you're never just going to arrive at the point where things get easy. It gets a little bit easier because you start to anticipate the reward of doing it, right? Like I have built it into my nervous system that I feel better after a workout even when I don't feel like it. So I'm able to push through because my brain has the reminder that, hey, after I do this hard thing, I feel better. There's a benefit. So my identity is linked to this, and there's also a biological driver that says, oh my gosh, like I know that I feel better after this. But you have to understand that that's not just something you just wake up with. You have to reinforce it over time. And so you're never just going to arrive at consistency. You have to work towards it. And it's a process, a never-ending process of you prioritizing yourself. And if you can do it in small ways, it makes it much easier. So if we understand that, hey, I understand, Brian, I have to meet myself where I'm at. I do have to stop being such a perfectionist. I have to maybe set some minimums. Maybe I need to see this as a long-term game. What do? Well, that's where understanding how to leverage keystone habits comes in. A keystone habit is a small habit that you put in place that starts to influence the other behaviors in your life. Think of it as the small domino that positively influences the other ones. You knock it down, before you know it, you have a chain reaction. And so what we want to start to build is some keystone habits that help us become a fit and healthy person. Now, the reason why keystone habits are so powerful is because they leverage the psychology of small wins. They help you see that you're making progress. And even better, they reinforce the core identity that you want to build. So if you start by saying, hey, every morning I'm going to cook myself breakfast. It's going to be a healthy breakfast. You start to reinforce that you are someone who prioritizes their health. You're someone who takes care of themselves. If you start every morning with a walk, hey, that is you becoming a healthy person. So we want to start to see that the psychology of behavior change doesn't have to be this massive overnight transformation. It actually works by compounding small wins towards where you want to be. A few years ago, I had this client named Matt. Matt had come into our program. He was almost 400 pounds. He was the heaviest ever been. He had sacrificed his health for years to grow his business. And he'd also done the yo-yo cycle with his weight and his fitness and health. And so when he came into our team, he's like, I just need something different. I need something to be different about this process. I said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. And we laid out the whole plan. We laid out the whole program. He's like, okay, I'm on board. And then once he signed on, about a week before he was supposed to start, I get this text message. He's like, man, I don't think I can do this. And I say, okay, well, tell me what's going on. He's like, well, I just feel so overwhelmed. I feel like I have to change everything. I said, I totally hear you. Well, let me ask you this. Could you stretch in the morning for 10 minutes? Yeah, I could probably stretch in the morning for 10 minutes. I think I could do that. Okay, awesome. Could you cook yourself a healthy breakfast with some protein in it? Yeah, I could do that. Okay, well, that's all I want you to focus on right now. That was my advice. And so what happened for Matt is once he did those things, he got some momentum. And the key was actually the breakfast. Because when he ate the healthy breakfast, he started to feel better. He had more energy. He wasn't as tired. He didn't have that midday crash because he was eating garbage. And then he ate a healthy lunch. And once you know, because of those two healthy decisions, he had a healthy dinner. And so once we did that, he started to see this huge shift in the way he was taking care of himself and the behaviors compounded in place. Today, he's down almost 100 pounds. He's healthier than he's ever been. He can bench like almost 250 pounds. And even better, his business is crushing it because of the way he's showing up and leading. And so another example was our client, Jamie. Jamie came to us and was really dealing with some intense health issues. And she actually shared a podcast on it, which I'd highly encourage you to go back and listen to. But what she needed to do was she needed to quit smoking so she could have this major surgery. And smoking was something that she'd done for years. for years, it was a part of her life. It was a part of her identity. She was a smoker. She always smoked. That was her thing. That was the way she coped with stress. And so we did a lot of work on how she managed stress. We taught her a lot around emotional awareness. But one of the things that I suggested to her is when she was trying to quit smoking, wasn't to feel like she had to quit right away. The first thing I encouraged her to do was to skip the morning cigarette. Just build awareness of what it feels like in your nervous system, build awareness of what's happening in your body, build awareness of your thoughts, build awareness of your state. But hit pause, just for a moment. If you want to have a cigarette when you get in the car, go right ahead, go have it. But build the awareness of what it feels like in your nervous system to not have it. And then pay attention to your thoughts. Pay attention to those two pieces and then see what you want to do next. And so just by putting in a simple keystone habit, I can't remember if it was 2 months or 3 months or 6 months, but she quit smoking. And today she's been smoke-free for almost 5 years. It was 4 years, but it's been incredible to see. She's totally transformed her health. And it's because of that small behavior that we shifted. And so yes, you do need to add other behaviors in time, but my encouragement is to start with something that changes the way you start your day. Start with something small. Start with a small keystone habit, something that takes you 5 to 10 minutes, but puts you in the lane of health. For me, my keystone habit is I wake up every morning and I take a cold shower. Pretty easy during the summer, a little bit more difficult during the winter. But the reason why is because it shocks my nervous system. It's automatically this rush of dopamine. So I take a cold shower, 2 minutes, and then the next behavior is I drink a glass of water. So that helps me get some hydration. And now I have a green drink most days. That's a new keystone habit that I've built this year, but that requires a whole lot of effort. So don't count that. So it's usually cold shower, water, and then I go for a walk. Because I can't do the green juice every day. If I'm traveling, if I'm here, but I can always take a cold shower. I can always drink a bottle of water. And I can almost always go for a 10-minute walk. And so the aspirational walk is maybe 20 minutes, but most days it's 10. And once you know those 3 behaviors, I can take them everywhere. Makes it really easy to start my day with a win. And more important, it's my way of reaffirming that I am a fit and healthy person. So when I'm traveling or I'm on vacation or I'm going to a business conference or I'm in a hotel, those 3 behaviors, I can take them everywhere. Just like you can take them with you too. And so if you want to be consistent, my encouragement is start this week with a small keystone habit. Put something small in your morning, right when you wake up. Maybe it's 10 minutes after you wake up, whatever the amount of time is. But something that takes you 5 to 10 minutes that helps reinforce that you're becoming a fit and healthy person. That helps you see that you're moving towards your goal. And if you want to do something more, you could put another keystone habit in the noon, right? Hey, I'm going to go for a walk in my lunchtime. You can put something later in the day, right? Like I read a page before I go to sleep. That's my keystone habit. I read something before I go to sleep. It helps me fall asleep better. Whatever it is for you, my encouragement is to pick it, practice, and see what changes. And again, you do not need to change everything overnight. Pick one small thing, like that target, and practice aiming at it. Practice hitting the target. And then when you do, most important, give yourself some credit. Because if you do not condition yourself to see that this is a rewarding behavior, what you're going to tell yourself is some BS story, which is, it's only one thing. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to work. And when you do that, once you know, it doesn't work. When you do that, once you know, you don't feel good about it. So most important part after you do the behavior is you celebrate the behavior. You remind yourself that you're doing something positive for your health, for yourself, and you're moving in the right direction. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this gives you some momentum, some clarity on how to break through and finally be consistent. Again, meet yourself where you're at. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to always push for the maximum. Focus on your minimums. Understand that it's a process, a daily process. You never just arrive at consistency until it's a core part of your identity. And still, even then, it's challenging. And then lastly, focus on building a small keystone habit. That is your gateway to transformation. It's the small behavior that starts influencing you towards who you want to become. And so I'd love to see in the comment section what your keystone habit is going to be, what you're going to focus on, and your biggest insight, your biggest takeaway. What are you gaining from this video today? I hope it's helpful. Comment below. And if you're new here, subscribe. But go out, take this all, and conquer your day. See you soon. Cheers.